So UFC 304 is going to be taking place in the UK in quite a few weeks now, coming up to the end of July, and a few of you guys have been asking for me to give my early predictions for the card, and since it is a card that I am very much looking forward to, it is a pay-per-view, it is in the UK, so there's going to be a lot of local talent there. I'm very happy to give my early predictions for this card, and it is also a 14 fight long card. You guys know I do love these longer cards. Now sometimes they can feel a little bit drawn out and long, but a 14 fight card, I think it's going to be a great one, and there are quite a few very fun matchups on this card. It is worth noting though, as I do get into my predictions for the card, this is my early predictions. The predictions could change, the card could even change with short notice. It seems like a lot of fights are now falling out. But overall, I do believe that aside from a couple of very low confidence picks, my picks are pretty set in stone. This is one of the lower confidence picks, I would say. It is Leroy Duncan fighting against Gregory Rodrigues. And it is a shame that I have to open up the card here with a low confidence pick, but at the moment I am siding with Gregory Rodrigues. Now, I will admit, it does kind of seem like his aura was snatched by Bruno Ferreira, and since then he has gotten a couple of decent wins. I mean, the win over Dennis Caolan, was it to the back of the head? Was it not? It was a dominant performance nonetheless, and then he knocked out Brad Tavares, and not that many people really do knock out Brad Tavares. He's a very tough guy, and is a pretty tough veteran for a lot of people to deal with. And now he's fighting against CLD, and CLD, I feel like, once again, was this really hyped up prospect. I was personally really excited about him, and then he lost against Armin Petrosian, and he kind of just didn't look very good in that matchup. And in that fight there, Armin Petrosian was kind of just beating him with much better kickboxing fundamentals. Leroy Duncan was trying to do too much. He was trying to throw spinning kicks, he was trying to kind of smooth slide around on the canvas. Like, it was very odd performance, and since then he has kind of, I guess, tightened up the technique a little bit, kind of gone back to the basics a bit more, and he has found some success over my boy Dennis Caolan again, on short notice I believe that one was, and then he knocked out Claudio Ribeiro, who I don't think is in the UFC, so sent him back to the regional scene. Unfortunately for Ribeiro, he was a fun fighter, but for Gregory Rodrigues, I think that he's going to be the one that can go out there and just be a little bit more technical on the feet when it does come down to the basics. He's got big power, so does CLD nonetheless, but I also do kind of consider the grappling that Gregory Rodrigues does have in his back pocket. Now, have we seen that much in the UFC? Not necessarily, but he does have a very solid grappling background. He does have a little bit of a wrestling background as well, to my knowledge, and I do feel like if he went into this matchup and he wanted to mix in the striking with the grappling, I think he can find a lot of success. So I'm going to go with Gregory Rodrigues to actually win a decision. I think that he might be a slight underdog here, or maybe there are no odds out for the fight because it is, I believe, short notice. Gregory Rodrigues is plus 100 right now. Leroy Duncan is minus 120. Those odds genuinely might flip by the time that fight night does roll around, though. And now we have Modestas Bukauskas fighting against Marcin Prachnio. And in my eyes, this is kind of like a mirror matchup. I mean, both guys are 6'3", both guys are strikers, both guys can kind of be low volume at times, so it kind of just comes down to which one of the two do you like more. And I'm going to go with Modestas Bukauskas here. Now, it is going to be a striking matchup. I would be very surprised if we saw any grappling whatsoever in this matchup here. Marcin Prachnio is a striker. Modestas Bukauskas is a striker. Now, Marcin Prachnio has a kickboxing base. He throws a lot of kicks. I mean, we did see a lot of kicks in the William Knight fight, and if you've watched that fight before, you will know it was a bit of a dodgy performance from William Knight. I think he threw like 10 strikes the entire 15-minute fight. It was odd, and then he come back against Prachnio, got out-grappled, and then beat Devin Clark in what was just a Devin Clark fight, to be honest with you. And then Bukauskas come back to the UFC on short notice, flew to Australia to take on Tyson Pedro on short notice after being released from the UFC and fighting for Cage Warriors a couple times. Come back, beat Zach Puunga, which was once again just a Zach Puunga fight that was not very good whatsoever, and then he did lose to Vitor Petrino. So both of these guys have lost to Petrino in different ways, but I think when it comes down to it, it's just going to be a striking matchup, and the guy that is going to be landing more is going to win, and I understand that just sounds like a terrible breakdown, but that's just what it comes down to be honest. I do like Bukauskas' striking. He has shown that he can be high volume, he has shown that he can be high level. I do understand the Pedro win, has aged terribly, but at the time, that was a very good win. Pedro was knocking out literally everybody, and I do think we're going to see Bukauskas get back on the winning column, I guess, the winning streak. Minus 150 for Modestas, Bukauskas, and Prachnio is a slight underdog. And now we have a fight, which I will be honest with you, I kind of struggle to pick a little bit, because Sam Patterson coming into the UFC, I was very excited about him. You know, he did go on there against Vinicius, who I don't think had fought for 3 years. Fought against Vinicius, managed to submit him there, and prior to that was fighting for Brave, and actually beat some very good opponents here. Took down this guy called Kamil Magomedov, who was 14-1 at the time, was able to submit him, and submitted a couple of pretty good guys over there in Brave. Come over to the UFC, and was on the receiving end of, honestly, probably like the most underrated knockout of last year. This was, I believe, in my top 5 knockouts of the year contenders, and unfortunately for Sam Patterson, he was on the receiving end. Sam Patterson was trying to fight the ref for a long time afterwards. It was one of the most brutal KO losses I've ever seen. But then he goes out there and he beats Johan Lainez in a fight, which of course I did pick Johan Lainez to win, because I thought that he was going to get knocked out. Now, for Kiefer Crosbie, he's good, but I think that his weaknesses are like Sam Patterson's best strengths. Sam Patterson used to fight at 155 pounds. He was very tall for the weight class, obviously 6'3". I believe he's actually listed at 6'4" when he was on the Contender Series. Very tall for 155, one of the tallest guys at 155, very lanky. I like the move up to 170, the weight cut's not going to be as brutal. The thing about Kiefer Crosbie is he is a scrappy boxer, and he is going to make fights very fun. He also had a very short notice fight and a debut against Kevin Jussé, who I believe this fight was put together like a couple of weeks before the card. Both Jussé and Crosbie were signed to fill up the card because nobody wanted to fight in Sydney, I guess. But prior to that, Crosbie did have a career in Bellator. He is affiliated with Conor McGregor through SBG Ireland, but his weakness is his grappling. He doesn't have the best grappling, and although with Sam Patterson, we haven't really seen too much of it in the UFC, mainly just because, you know, he won in 2 minutes and then he was knocked out brutally in just over a minute. That's the best part of his game, is his grappling, and I think the worst part of Kiefer Crosbie's game is his grappling. So I think it's just going to come down to Sam Patterson being able to out-grapple Crosbie, and I do think he's going to be able to get the submission. I mean, Kevin Jussé made it look way too easy, man. Like, Kevin Jussé was on a Kiefer Crosbie's back, and Crosbie had both of his hands on the mat, just giving up his neck to be submitted. I think that that's going to be something that could potentially be exposed in this fight, and I am actually going to go with Sam Patterson to win this one here. He's a massive favourite at minus 350, and it seems like it's not a hot take whatsoever for him to win by submission. So we can move now to Mick Parkin fighting against Lukasz Brzeski, who might be fighting for his career. I understand he's coming off a win, but the thing about Brzeski is he's probably not in the UFC's good books. You know, he just beat Walter Walker. Probably not a really... Actually, no, maybe not, because he would have signed a 4-fight contract after he fought on the Contender Series, and then he probably re-earned that contract by beating Walter Walker, but I don't think that the UFC will be super excited about him beating Johnny Walker's undefeated 11-0 brother. But what happened to Brzeski was, I will be honest with you, he is not the same guy that fought Dylan Potter at all. He looked in much better shape against Dylan Potter, and unfortunately for Brzeski, that may have potentially been used to do something along the lines of this result here. But it is what it is. He's moved on, and he's lost 3 in a row, and then he'd come back against Walter Walker. But Lukasz Brzeski, significantly worse shape than the guy that fought against Dylan Potter. Got robbed pretty badly against Marcin, probably the worst decision of 2022, and then was out-wrestled by Carl Williams and got knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta. But the thing about Lukasz Brzeski is he's actually a very good striker, in my opinion, for the weight class. I think he can be pretty low volume to start fights, but once he gets going, he does get going. He does have very good power for the weight class. He has decent cardio. I mean, he was able to beat Walter Walker by making Walter Walker look absolutely terrible, and although I did pick Walter Walker to win that fight, I did tell you guys that I wasn't very confident in it because I was watching tape on Walker and he had no striking whatsoever. People in the comments, although I picked Walker, were absolutely clowning that take whatsoever, and I honestly should have just ballsed up and picked Brzeski, but it is what it is. But now he's taking on Mick Parkin, and Mick Parkin is, once again, kind of an interesting sort of fighter for me, because I think he's a lot better than I originally rated him to be. And this is actually the single reason why I don't actually look into records all too much anymore. In the past, I used to kind of look at level of competition and kind of use it as a factor to determine how good I think a prospect could potentially be. And Parkin is single-handedly the guy that actually convinced me or showed me that that's actually not really the best way to evaluate a prospect. Because going into his Contender Series fight, he had never fought someone with a winning record as a pro, and he'd only ever fought winning records as an amateur earlier on into his career, and then after that, he kind of just built up his records against losing competition, had a draw against a guy with 5-0 record, and now he's in the UFC making names for himself against good competition, you know, made his debut against Jamal Puiguez, who I think I rate a lot higher than most people do, to be fair, beat Caio Machado in what was a close decision, but managed to scrap it out with him, and then he just beat the motor, Muhammad Usman, in a decision. And I think this is a step down in competition, in my opinion, from Muhammad Usman. I think Usman would give Brzeski a very tough fight. I think we should see Mick Parkin go out there and win. He's got very solid boxing. I believe he trains with Tom Aspinall. I could be wrong about that. He's got very solid boxing. He does have a strong clinch, and if things are going to get scrappy and kind of difficult for Brzeski, for Parkin, on the feet with Brzeski, because he's got so much power, Parkin can take him down, because Brzeski doesn't have the best takedown defense. Now, it has been tested by Walter Walker and Carl Williams, but I do think that Parkin should be able to kind of win by being more well-rounded. I think that was way too long of a breakdown for a somewhat low-level heavyweight fight, even though I do think we are going to see Mick Parkin kind of build himself up as a pretty good prospect in the weight class. I'm trying to find the odds for this one here, and I genuinely cannot find them. Minus 200 for Mick Parkin, minus 225 for Mick Parkin on some sports books. Seems about right, to be honest with you. And we can move on now to Oban Elliot fighting Preston Parsons, and this is probably going to be an underdog pick. I'm just going to quickly check right now. I'm picking Preston Parsons, and he's not. He's minus 165. Okay, that doesn't make me feel so bad about my pick, to be honest with you. I don't know how I feel about Oban Elliot, man. I'll be honest with you, he kind of seems like he's got the mentality of a guy that really believes himself and really believes he can go far, and I think that will take you very far, kind of believing in yourself. But when it comes down to watching him fight, I was very unimpressed by his win over Kape Brito. In fact, I kind of still am on the fence of, should have been a draw, you know, it is what it is. And then he fights Val Woodburn, and if Val Woodburn didn't have negative fight IQ, he would have knocked him out. On more than one occasion, he had Oban Elliot in trouble on the feet. Oban Elliott's a wrestler, and that's kind of all he's really got, is wrestling. His striking is in development, and his grappling is very good as well. But I feel like when I look at Preston Parsons is a guy that has decent grappling, has kind of showcased a decent-ish striking in the UFC. Not really. I mean, like, he did beat Evan Aldo, who fought him on short notice after getting knocked out by D-Rod, and then he got jabbed up by Trevin Giles, but was able to find success. It is an interesting pick here for Parsons, because it is grappler versus grappler. Parsons won't really be able to punish Oban Elliot on the feet too much, I don't think, even though I do think that is a weakness in Oban Elliott's game that was not only exposed by Kape Brito, was very badly exposed by Val Woodburn, who was just a layup for him, let's be real here with that one. I think that we're going to see Parsons go out there, man. I mean, I don't know if he can really defend the takedowns of Oban Elliot, but I think he'll be able to kind of reverse positions somewhat and put himself in dominant positions. And on the feet, both guys aren't the best strikers, but I would like to side with Preston Parsons. I just don't know how I feel about Oban Elliot striking. So I'm going to be going against the majority here and picking the favorite in Preston Parsons to defeat Oban Elliot in this matchup here. And now we have a bantamweight fight between Caolan Loughran and Raman Tavares, and I don't know how this fight come up in conversation, like, at all, but I was talking to the Australian MMA reporter Benny P MMA, who's got a YouTube channel as well, so go and check that out. I was talking to Benny P last night, and somehow we were talking about this fight. I don't know how it come up, but somehow we were, and I'm going to pick Caolan Loughran here, and this is how it kind of come up in conversation. We're actually talking about Contender Series prospects and how it can be very hard to find tape on them. And Raman Tavares is one of those guys, and the reason why is with Raman Tavares, before his Contender Series fight against Sergey Sadi, the only fights that you can actually find of Raman Tavares easily accessible on YouTube are his wins and his good performances. Now, he does have bad performances and wins, like his win here over Ryan Mandala was not a good performance. He's got a KO loss here. You cannot find these fights easily on YouTube. Now, you can find them, but they're not easy to access. Raman Tavares is a boxer, and that's kind of all he's got. He doesn't really have anything else, in my opinion, whatsoever, which does make the Sergey Sadi versus him fight so frustrating, because I think that Sergey Sadi might have the worst fight IQ in the UFC. Now, that is a title that I do give to a lot of people, but I think Sergey Sadi might be number one, because you go into a fight against Raman Tavares, who can only box, can't wrestle, has been taken down easily in the past by much worse competition, and you decide to box with him for 3 rounds, and you're a good grappler, and then you lose a split decision. Oh, what was he doing? But yeah, that's the thing about Tavares, is he only has striking. He doesn't really have anything else, in my opinion. I've seen him taken down before by, in my opinion, worse wrestlers than Caolan Loughran. Caolan Loughran is an interesting prospect to me, though, because I will happily admit that I haven't been that impressed with him in the UFC so far, even though I was very high on him coming into the UFC initially. I was very, very excited to see him come in over from Cage Warriors, where he was finding a lot of success against some very good competition. It was actually this win here over Festus Aholu, which I watched live, where I was like, man, Caolan Loughran's the real deal. He's a massive bantamweight, and he's a wrestler. I believe he went for 4 takedowns against Angel Pacheco, got 3 of them. Attempted 11 takedowns against Taylor Lapilus, got 2 of them. Now, I thought he lost the fight, but he made it close. It was a short notice fight, upper weight class for him. You know, the fight got shifted around. Lapilus is a very good fighter. He did go on to lose after that, but Lapilus is still a very top talented prospect at 145 pounds, and Caolan Loughran made it very competitive with him. The only way that Raman Tavares, in my opinion, wins this one is if he knocks out Loughran, and I just don't think that Loughran's going to give him that opportunity. I feel like this is a similar matchup, in my opinion, to the Angel Pacheco fight, where Angel Pacheco is a good grappler, but he's a very scrappy striker for the most part, and Loughran was able to take him down. I think that we're going to be able to see Loughran take down Raman Tavares as well. I don't think that Loughran has negative fight IQ, and I do think he actually will look to use his wrestling and much superior grappling, unlike the worst fight IQ fighter on the roster, Sergey Sadi. Caolan Loughran's the pick. He's not that dangerous, but I think he's going to get the decision. He's minus 200 on the odds. Now, with that out of the way, we can now move on to Molly McCann fighting against Bruna Brazil. And it's one of those fights where I just don't want to pick Molly McCann. I will be honest, but I kind of have to, because I like fading Bruna Brazil in the matchups like this, and the reason why is because Bruna Brazil is a talented striker. She is. She has very good technique for the weight class, but the thing about Bruna Brazil, and I feel like her fight actually against Denise Gomes really showcased this, is that she looks good when the fight is going her way. If you let Bruna Brazil fight from range, throw her kicks, have her really nice technique that she does have, and kind of fight her own fight from range, she will look good. She will find a lot of success. That's how she was able to knock out Marnik Man, who just isn't really the best striker in the world and was just standing at head kick range, ironically, who got head kicked. But Denise Gomes went out there and pushed forward and pressured forward against Bruna Brazil, and Bruna Brazil looked like she had absolutely no idea how to deal with being backed up. She looked like she had no idea how to deal with pressure. She didn't want to be there when she was getting pressured backwards. And then she fought Shauna Bannon, former world kickboxing champion, by the way, in WAKO kickboxing, but it's what it is. And then Shauna Bannon let her fight her own kickboxing sort of style and won the fight that way. It was a close fight, but she did win. And then Loma Lookboonmee, kind of same sort of thing. Didn't give her space, didn't let her fight, and that way was able to win. Molly McCann is a boxer with wrestling and grappling. I should say, well, not really grappling, does she? She doesn't really have any grappling, but she's a boxer wrestler, in my eyes anyway. I understand that she got lots of KOs, and that's really how she rose to fame. She's a boxer wrestler in my eyes. And if she goes out there against Bruna Brazil and uses that boxing, moves forward, I think that she can pressure Bruna Brazil backwards, won't give Bruna Brazil the space to throw the kicks and everything that she likes to do because she does have very good technique. I think McCann can just make it scrappy and kind of make it a very annoying fight for Bruna Brazil. McCann used to be a flyweight, now she's come down to strawweight, made her debut against Diana Barbicha, ironically won by armbar. Anyway, dude, MMA makes no sense, does it? It really just doesn't. But anyway, Molly McCann, I think that she can go out there against Bruna Brazil, pressure forward, make Brazil move backwards, and just make it a very annoying, difficult fight for Bruna Brazil that she doesn't really want to be a part of. So I like that for McCann. She can also get takedowns if she wants to as well. We haven't really seen too much wrestling really out of McCann for a long time, if ever, to be honest, but I do know that she's got wrestling in the back pocket. McCann at minus 275 is, there's better bets on the card. There just is. There's much better bets on the card. Let's move on to Shauna Bannon fighting against Ravina Oliveira. And I believe this is an underdog pick for me because I am picking Ravina Oliveira here, who did actually make her debut up 2 weight classes on short notice, to my knowledge. No, Ravina Oliveira is the favourite as well. Shauna Bannon is plus 120. Ravina Oliveira is minus 140. Okay, all good. Anyway, Ravina Oliveira made her debut on the UFC against Tainara Lisboa, up 2 weight classes on short notice. Oliveira is a strawweight, this fight is at strawweight, and then she went out there and had a somewhat competitive fight against Tainara Lisboa in that matchup, where she actually managed to win the 3rd round against Lisboa on a couple of scorecards. And in that matchup, although Oliveira does have some good grappling, have some good striking, she was out-grappled and out-controlled by Tainara Lisboa for a bit, but she was actually able to find her own striking and grappling offense and get her own control in that 3rd round. Shauna Bannon is, I believe, once again affiliated with Conor McGregor. She did post her having dinner with Conor McGregor on Twitter. I believe it was either shortly after or shortly before her fight with Bruna Brazil, but I think that Shauna Bannon, she might train here with Paddy Holohan as well, but I think she also does train at SPG too, since Conor McGregor knows who she is, of course. She is a former WAKO kickboxing world champion. And WAKO is the style of kickboxing that I used to do when I was a bit younger. And I was a little bit disappointed when she went out there and lost to Bruna Brazil. But both of these girls are pretty small, I feel. I feel like that Shauna Bannon is actually the much smaller strawweight out of the two, if this does make sense. And I know that although Ravina Oliveira does have a lot of wins with her striking, I know that she can grapple, and I think just that well-roundedness is really what's going to lead her to being able to defeat Shauna Bannon in this one here. I feel like if Shauna Bannon was really to get some momentum going, I thought Bruna Brazil was a really good opponent for her to showcase that world-class kickboxing, which she has had in the past anyway. I think Oliveira's going to make it annoying. Oliveira's a decent striker. She's a decent grappler. I think she's just going to win once again by using her well-roundedness, and she is the favourite, even though I'm picking against the majority on Tapology at the moment. Nathaniel Wood will be taking on Daniel Pineda, who had a bit of a career resurgence, I guess you could say, recently. I mean, Daniel Pineda's not young. He's going to be nearly 39 years old coming into this matchup with Daniel Wood. But he actually fought for the PFL and had a lot of success for the PFL. Knocked out Mavlid Kabuliev, I believe, in 22 seconds. And I believe he beat Jeremy Kennedy as well in 4 minutes. But unfortunately, I think that he was a bit... He was just a little bit... Just a little bit. You know what I mean? Just a little bit. Knocked him out in 29 seconds with leg kick, sorry, I should say. You know, so that happened. But then, for some reason, the UFC was like, hey, I mean, just come and fight for us instead of the PFL. And here he is. He beat Herbert Burns, beat Tucker Lutz, which I guess was a good performance. I thought he looked pretty good against Alex Caceres, even though Caceres really could have put it on him in the 3rd round. But the thing about Daniel Pineda that does make him so interesting to me is that he has, 28 wins? And 17 of them are in the 1st round. All of them are by finish. And the thing about Pineda as well that I want to mention is that he is absolutely massive for the weight class. He's going to be much, much bigger than Nathaniel Wood. I mean, these guys are not going to be the same size in there, despite their 5'6" and 5'7" heights. Daniel Pineda is huge for 145 pounds, and Nathaniel Wood is small for 145 pounds, and honestly, I wouldn't really hate the idea of him going back down to, I believe he was at 135 pounds at the start of his career, but he did go on a bit of a run, had a good 3-fight win streak, lost to Naimov in the fight, which Naimov was just cheating the whole time, I'll be honest. Thank you, Felipe Lima. You are a legend. But yeah, I like Wood in this one here. Wood's very good striker. He's much more technical, in my opinion, than Daniel Pineda, who is going to be a lot more powerful and a lot more big. And I think it's just going to come down to Nathaniel Wood being able to avoid Daniel Pineda, kind of get out of that first round. And after the first round, although Daniel Pineda has absolutely improved on this, he's not the same fighter in the second round than he is in the first round. So I feel like maybe Pineda's going to land a big shot. Maybe he is going to get a takedown, you know, have some attempts there with the grappling. But at the end of the day, Nathaniel Wood has shown that he can hold a high volume, high pace fight for 3 rounds. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think that he fought a controversial take, I guess. A somewhat similar opponent in Andre Fili, I guess. And was able to kind of really scrap it out with Andre Fili. And then beat him, which I think he could do with Daniel Pineda. I got lost with my words there. I'm just going to pick Nathaniel Wood, who's minus 450. I mean, minus 450 for Wood? I mean, someone's going to have to explain that one to me in the comments, because I know Pineda's like not looked good recently, and he is 39. He's got a lot of power. 98% of people are picking Wood. I am picking Wood, but I'm not like high confidence in Wood. I've got to be open and honest with you about that. We can move on to the main card. Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett. I'll be honest with you, I think this probably is the fight where we see Paddy Pimblett take his first loss in the UFC. The odds I don't think are going to be in Pimblett's favour either. They're not. Green is minus 140. Paddy Pimblett is plus 115. I believe Bobby Green actually just changed his name legally to King Green, but it's still Bobby Green on Tapology, so I'm just gonna go with that for now. Paddy Pimblett. I'll put my hand up and say it. I did pick Tony Ferguson to beat him, and that tells you what I think about Paddy Pimblett. Honestly, I just haven't been impressed, man. Haven't been impressed. When you see this guy striking, I know everyone kind of memes it and laughs about it. This is true. His chin is way up in the air. He's not tucking his chin whatsoever. He could get his jaw broken doing that, and trust me, getting your jaw broken's not gonna be fun. I mean, I've seen it happen to some fighters before. It's brutal. Paddy Pimblett, the chin's way up in the air, like literally way up in the air. He doesn't move his hands. He doesn't move his feet. He doesn't move his head. He's got no striking defense whatsoever. And he's got bad cardio, I think, in my opinion as well, which Tony Ferguson exposed. Now, I understand that he just did that marathon or whatever it was over multiple days with David Goggins, and then went into this fight against Paddy Pimblett probably injured, I'll be honest with you. Pimblett won the fight, don't get me wrong. But in the third round, Paddy Pimblett was gassed, man. He had nothing left. And I know he eventually got the takedown on Tony Ferguson. When the fight was on the feet in that second and third round, Tony Ferguson was piecing him up. Tony Ferguson, of all people, by the way, was piecing him up on the feet, was landing really good leg kicks, was landing good shots to the body. Ferguson, honestly, for a moment there, looked like he was going to be able to find the finish over Paddy Pimblett, but Pimblett ended up really getting a desperate takedown towards the end and ended up winning the fight that way. Bobby Green, I understand he's a little bit older now, but it kind of almost seems like he's coming into his prime a little bit. He's been supremely active. He did headbutt Jared Gordon there. It was pretty egregious, I will admit, but since then he's fought often, knocked out and exposed Grant Dawson's glass chin, was able to beat Tony Ferguson by submission. How? Anyway, lost to Jalen Turner, very bad KO loss, and I was very worried about that going into the Jim Miller fight, but then against Jim Miller, just kind of beat him up, didn't he? Really beat him up. And I think that we're going to be able to see that kind of happen to Paddy Pimblett here. Paddy Pimblett, his striking, I understand he's got power. I understand he's got finishes before on the feet. He's not very technical on the feet, and his chin is just way up there. I understand, I've said it multiple times now. He's hittable, man. He's there to be hit. Jared Gordon exposed it. Tony Ferguson exposed it. Now you're fighting Bobby Green, the same guy that knocked out Grant Dawson in under a minute with what literally was a jab. I think that we're going to see Bobby Green get the knockout here, man, against Paddy Pimblett. I think we're going to see the finish. I understand Green's a high-volume boxer that doesn't really get the most finishes, and that's another thing as well that I didn't really kind of bring up. Bobby Green has such a frustrating boxing style that I don't think a guy that isn't like that great at striking technique can deal with. I don't think that Pimblett's going to be able to hang with him on the feet, honestly, really whatsoever. We can move up to Muhammad Mokaev fighting against Manel Kape. Now, conflicting stories have come out about this fight. Now, whether or not there was an altercation between these two in Vegas at the UFC PI, there have been allegations thrown out there that potentially Manel Kape may have attacked Muhammad Mokaev outside the PI and injured him before their fight, I believe, was scheduled, or maybe it was the fight against Alex Perez was scheduled. Maybe that happened, maybe that didn't. Who knows? But with that aside, I mean, Manel Kape's a pretty crazy dude, isn't he? And I understand that his fight against Felipe dos Santos was fun. I still don't think that Felipe dos Santos is the best fighter on the planet, and he made it pretty scrappy with Manel Kape. But this isn't going to be a striking fight. Muhammad Mokaev is going to be shooting for takedowns, and it just comes down to, can Manel Kape keep this fight on the feet? Because we're kind of learning, and this is going to sound crazy to say, and maybe crazy to hear for a lot of people, we're kind of learning that Muhammad Mokaev might not be this super hot prospect that we once believed that he was. You know, he went 23-0 as an amateur. I believe he won the World Championships as an amateur more than once. He's not even 24 years old yet, so he's one of the youngest fighters on the roster, and he's in the rankings, but he didn't look that good against Alex Perez, let's be honest. It wasn't a very good performance. He looked... This is the one, guys. This is the one. I thought he had fought twice after he fought Tim Elliott. Dude, he was down 2-0 on 2 of the judges' scorecards. If Tim Elliott managed to survive and go to decision, he would have beaten Muhammad Mokaev, you know. And I know Tim Elliott's like a tricky dude, but Tim Elliott's still Tim Elliott, you know. And then Jafel Filho gave problems, but these are problems on the ground. The only man to really give him problems on the feet was Malcolm Gordon. No, I was searching for it. As Malcolm Gordon gave him problems on the feet. If you actually watch that fight, and I'm not even joking, Gordon had so many moments on the feet against Muhammad Mokaev, and I'm kind of just thinking, like, man, as long as this fight is on the feet, Manel Kape is going to have the opportunities to really win the matchup. And I understand that's super kind of basic to break down a wrestler versus striker fight. That's really what it comes down to, because you look at Manel Kape, he had that striking war, I guess, with Felipe dos Santos, where he was just the much more technical, well-composed fighter. He beat Dvorak, but that win is aged poorly. He beat Zaga Shimekilov. That win is aged poorly. Beat Odi Osborne, aged poorly. Arguably beat Nicolau. Arguably beat Pantoja. I mean, it kind of just comes down to, like, do you believe that Manel Kape can defend the takedowns? That's it. That's literally it. Because as long as this fight is on the feet, Manel Kape is going to be able to beat up Muhammad Mokaev, and I think somewhat easily. But if Mokaev does what he usually does, and that's shoot takedowns, Muhammad Mokaev, I believe, shot 13 takedowns against Charles Johnson, maybe more than that. It was a lot of takedowns, and Johnson wasn't really defending them very well, and Johnson is a guy that I do consider to have decent takedown defense. Now, we'll see how his fight against Josh Van goes, because that hasn't happened yet, but I do consider Johnson to be a pretty decent wrestler. I went into this video going to pick Manel Kape, and I'm going to do it. I'm just going to pick Manel Kape. Now, the problem is, I don't feel good about it. This is probably my lowest confidence pick on the card, and honestly could flip. I could be convinced to pick Mokaev easily. But I just think that, like, neither of these two's wins have aged very well. The performances for Manel Kape, in my opinion, have looked a little bit more impressive for overseas against Felipe dos Santos. But then he's missed weight in the past recently, and he's just kind of been pulling out of fights, and he's just been yapping. I think the odds for this one are dead even. Mokaev is minus 120 on one sports book, and Kape's like minus 110, plus 100. It's even odds. It makes sense to me. I'm going to go with Kape, but like, I don't know. I could really be convinced that Mokaev can beat Kape, because I think that this is a somewhat similar stylistic matchup to the Alex Perez fight. I really do. But I'm going to go with Kape. You know, he's got his big... He's had a lot of fights, a lot of career in Ryzen, if I can speak English. We did fight, like, decent grapplers, not the best grapplers in the world, but decent grapplers. Fought against Kai Asakura. Kyoji Haraguchi got submitted by him, though. It's like, yeah, I'm scared about that one. Let's just move on. Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze, and I'm a little bit worried about this matchup for Arnold Allen. I'm going to pick Arnold Allen, just put that out there right now. but it's not stylistically really the best matchup for Arnold Allen in my opinion, because what I know Arnold Allen for is probably what he used to fight like, and I will admit maybe this is like an outdated take on Arnold Allen, and you know, I know that's probably a bit of a terrible kind of thing to say, but Arnold Allen, in my eyes anyway, is a low volume striker that relies on his power to win his fights. He made it close against Evloev. He had a very good competitive performance against Max Holloway. I think Ariel Helwani even scored the fight for him, which is kind of crazy, but it's what it is. Knocked out Dan Hooker in a fight which Dan Hooker did look very slow in. Beat Calvin Kattar in a fight which he got injured in though. But these fights here against Sadiq Youssef, Nick Lentz, Gilbert Melendez, in all of these fights, I believe he didn't land the most strikes out of the two in pure striking fights. But what he was able to do was land with more power. Against Sadiq Youssef, I think Youssef landed more strikes against him, and Arnold Allen knocked him down twice and was able to win that way. I think the exact same thing happened with the Nick Lentz fight. So the way that I kind of do view Arnold Allen, although he has made rapid improvements and huge improvements since then, I should say, is that he can be low volume at times, and he does rely on that power to get him through and to win him rounds on the scorecards using his damage, of course. Giga Chikadze has that high-level kickboxing background. I believe he fought for Glory Kickboxing a long time ago and actually had a lot of success fighting for Glory and finding success in kickboxing. Since then, coming to the UFC, was all hyped up. He was a massive hype job, of course, at one point, and then Calvin Kattar, he shut that... Yeah, he did. he shut that down. He shut that down, man, and we didn't really see him again for a very long time until he fought Caceres in a fight which he looked good against Caceres, I should say, who is a very tricky, talented striker. But I do think that in this one, though, we could see Giga Chikadze kind of the same sort of thing, landing more strikes and really forcing Arnold Allen to mix it up. I think that Arnold Allen is probably going to have to score a knockdown over Giga Chikadze to really secure the fight for him. And I think that even potentially we might need to see him wrestle as well, which we don't really see too much out of him. Giga Chikadze was completely shut down by Calvin Kattar, albeit 2.5 years ago, but was completely shut down by Kattar because Kattar, once again, kind of like Bruno Brazil, pressured forward against Giga Chikadze, and Chikadze had absolutely no answer for it. He had absolutely no answer to the wrestling as well after he was getting pressured forward and really kind of pushed backwards in that fight. Arnold Allen, in my opinion, can do that same thing. He does have big power for the weight class. Chikadze is going to have to respect that power that Arnold Allen is going to be throwing his way. And I think that Arnold Allen can set the pace, he can set the tone, he can push Giga Chikadze back, he can make it a tough fight for Chikadze in that way, and might even be able to back him up to a point where he can find takedowns up against the cage. I like Arnold Allen. I think he's going to be able to take control of the cage and really kind of stop Chikadze fighting what he wants to fight, the way that he wants to fight. So I'm going to go with Allen, minus 260. I think it's a little bit wide, I'll be honest. I'm not that confident in Allen at all, but I do think he should be able to get the win by decision. But I do think that he's going to have to really secure the fight with a big moment, like a knockdown or something like that. Now we have a rematch, somewhat interesting rematch, I guess you could say, since unfortunately the first one didn't last long. You know, it was just a little injury. Well, not a little injury, a major injury for Tom Aspinall. Unfortunately for him, I believe when he was kind of falling back on a kick, he tore a muscle in his leg. I can't remember the exact one now that I kind of get to it. But since then, Aspinall's looked good. Dismantled Marcin Tybura at home easily. Knocked out Sergey Pavlovich for the belt on short notice. Legendary stuff, I'll be honest with you. I did pick Pavlovich in that matchup. But he fights Curtis Blaydes. And I did pick Curtis Blaydes in the first fight, but I just don't think that you can use the first fight at all as a reference. Like, at all. I think you can just throw it away. I mean, it was a 20-second fight, something like that. Like, they did get scrappy, but, like, we didn't really see anything to kind of come up with a very definitive conclusion. But I think Aspinall wins, because Curtis Blaydes, although he is probably, like, no, I don't know if he is. I don't know if you can say this anymore. But Curtis Blaydes, I used to think that he was the best pure wrestler at heavyweight, and then he got taken down by Jailton Almeida pretty easily. But I think that Blaydes kind of has probably maybe the best wrestling background at heavyweight, maybe aside from, like, John Jones. I guess you could say him. Blaydes is a really good wrestler at heavyweight, is kind of what I'm trying to say. One of the best wrestlers at heavyweight, for sure. He's showcased that many, many times in the UFC before, But then he kind of really developed his boxing, fought against Chris Daukaus and showcased that boxing. And then I think after he knocked out Chris Daukaus in a purely boxing fight, he fell in love with his hands. And he fell in love with his hands a lot. You know, the Aspinall fight happened, but then he fought against Sergey Pavlovich, and he just never shot a takedown. This is Curtis Blaydes, the guy that was taking down everyone. This is the guy that was controlling Jairzinho Rozenstruik by taking him down every single round. Got knocked out by Pavlovich because he just didn't shoot for takedowns. He just didn't shoot for takedowns at all. And then against Jailton Almeida, you know, he was the one getting out wrestled, and it is what it is. He was able to knock him out because Almeida, I don't know what Almeida was doing, but it is what it is. Aspinall is fighting him, and I think when it comes down to it, the better pure boxer is Aspinall. I think Aspinall has very good wrestling in his own right. Is it as good as Curtis Blaydes? Probably not, but when it comes down to like pure BJJ, I think Aspinall probably does have the ability to put Blaydes in some tough positions because he does have a very good grappling base in his own aspect, and he also does have the ability to stand up if he does get taken down for sure using that grappling. Maybe even he could like throw up some submissions potentially and kind of put Blaydes in a tough position to stand up if he does get taken down. But from what I've seen out of Curtis Blaydes is that he's fallen in love with his hands, man, like a lot. And if these guys are going to go strike for strike, punch for punch, band for band, I think Tom Aspinall comes out on top with the boxing, man. I think he's the much better boxer out of the two. I mean, we've seen Tom Aspinall train with Tyson Fury before. You know, Tom Aspinall wanted to be a boxer. He's got very good boxing for MMA. He's got very good boxing for heavyweights at MMA as well. And I think that we're going to see him go out there and knock out Curtis Blaydes here. If Blaydes goes to the wrestling, I think he can make it very interesting because that's what made Blaydes so good in the first place, is that wrestling. But when he doesn't wrestle, he just gets knocked out. It's kind of as simple as that. I think Tom Aspinall is going to win. And then after that, I think he's going to have to call out John Jones. And defending the interim title, I don't think it's happened like in recent UFC history. I know it's happened before more than once, but I don't think an interim champion has defended the belt maybe in like the last 4 years. It's been a long time. Leon Edwards is rematching Bilal Muhammad. Now, my most loyal subscriber, my most loyal commenter, he loves Bilal Muhammad. I believe his username is QUI. He just has a black screen as his profile picture. He'll be so excited for this fight. Honestly, he's probably more excited for this fight than I am. But I'm about to ruin his day. I'm probably going to ruin his year because I'm going to pick Leon Edwards. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. Leon Edwards is a lot better than people think he is. Much better than people think he is. I picked him to beat Nate Diaz, of course I did. But I picked him to beat Kamaru Usman. I picked him to beat Kamaru Usman in the rematch. Nobody really did that. Aside from me and Jacob from We Want Picks, I think picked him both times back to back. And then he goes out there and he beats Colby Covington. Unfortunately, I can't vouch for you there, Jacob. You did pick Covington. But I did pick Leon Edwards 3 times in a row. And 3 times in a row, the world has doubted him. And I think he just goes out there and beats Bilal Muhammad, man. I mean, their first fight was a no contest. Leon Edwards, I will admit, has been very inactive since then. I am actually quite disappointed in his inactiveness as a fan of his. But in that fight, Leon Edwards was kind of just beating the crap out of Bilal Muhammad on the feet. Nearly knocked him out with the head kick. And then Bilal did get eye poked, and it is what it is. But since then, he's done his thing. You know, he's won a few decisions, managed to TKO Sean Brady somehow. Very well aging win as well, by the way. Beat Gilbert Burns, but Gilbert Burns was injured, and I thought he didn't look that good in that fight, I'll be honest. Leon Edwards has already kind of showcased to the world that he can beat Bilal Muhammad's style. He's already done it. He beat Kamaru Usman with the head kick, albeit he was losing at elevation. I will admit he was losing this one. But then he just went out there and beat him by decision after losing a point and having a point deducted. So beat him 49-46. Beat him 4 rounds to 1. Smoked him. Absolutely smoked him. And Bilal Muhammad, I would say, fights similarly to Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman was more of a threat on the feet as well than Bilal Muhammad was. You know, Bilal Muhammad, I mean, if you don't respect his striking, you're going to end up like Sean Brady. But Bilal Muhammad's striking, like I don't know if people do this ironically or not. It's actually genuinely hard to tell. People rate it. It's not that good. It didn't look good against Gilbert Burns. Burns was injured the whole fight, and he still wasn't able to finish Gilbert Burns, which is just crazy. And then Bilal Muhammad's going to wrestle, but like he's not really a guy that's just taking people down easily and often like Kamaru Usman was, or Colby Covington kind of did before he fought against. Yeah, just Covington. That wasn't the real Colby Covington. Let's be honest. But I mean, Leon Edwards just beat Colby Covington, who's like a non-stop wrestler. Yeah, I just can't see Bilal Muhammad getting the takedowns over Leon Edwards. And as long as the fight's on the feet, I think Edwards controls that, man. Like, I know that he's a very kind of boring fighter. A lot of people don't like Edwards, I know. But he's so accurate. He's a sniper on the feet, man. Like, he just doesn't miss. He's got insane striking accuracy. I know he's low volumes, but it's just because he picks his shots. He's a really smart striker. And I know a lot of people kind of use that as like a meme of when there's a really terrible fight and then all of the neckbeards say, "Oh, you casuals, you just don't get it. He's just he's just picking his shots," or it's like the game plan or all this nonsense. I understand that Edwards can be in boring fights, but I feel like it's different just because it's so high level. Honestly, I know that's probably very hypocritical, but Leon Edwards is a talented striker. I think he beats Bilal Muhammad. One of my probably hottest takes on the planet is that I actually think that Leon Edwards beats everyone in the top 5 of welterweight. I'm gonna get cooked for that one, but I'm a Leon Edwards believer, man. I really am. I think he does beat Bilal Muhammad. Now, if he doesn't finish Bilal Muhammad, I will be very disappointed. But I'm going to pick Leon Edwards to win by TKO. I just think he's going to beat the crap out of him, man. Honestly, I think that's just what I just think he's going to beat the shit out of him for 5 rounds, and eventually he's going to find the finish. Bilal Muhammad is 36. This man could be my father. He's 36. That's the end of it. Leon Edwards is minus 200. I actually think that's pretty good value. I just can't see Bilal winning. I'm so sorry, QUI. I know you're going to be disappointed, but that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video.